The fluorescent lights of St. Jude's Metropolitan Emergency Department hummed with a low, electric buzz that seemed to vibrate in the teeth of everyone who worked there. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday, the hour when the city's chaos usually settled into a grim, predictable rhythm of overdoses, domestic disputes, and the occasional cardiac arrest. But tonight, the air felt different. It was thick, charged with a static tension that had nothing to do with the storm brewing outside and everything to do with the man lying on Trauma Bay 1. Elena Vance stood in the corner of the bay, her hands clasped loosely behind her back, her posture so still she might have been part of the wall. She wore the standard-issue navy scrubs of the nursing staff, slightly faded from too many washes, and a name badge that hung crookedly on her chest. To the casual observer, she was invisible, a piece of furniture, a shadow that moved supplies from one shelf to another. But her eyes, dark and unblinking, were fixed on the patient's chest, tracking the rise and fall of his breathing with a precision that bordered on the obsessive. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the attending physician for the night shift, paced around the gurney like a shark circling prey. He was a man who wore his ego as loudly as his white coat, his voice projecting to the edges of the room even when he was speaking softly. He glanced at Elena, not with recognition, but with a flicker of irritation, as if her very presence in his peripheral vision was an obstruction to his brilliance. "Nurse Vance," Thorne said, his tone clipped, devoid of warmth. "Stop staring and get me the intubation kit, and try to look like you know what you're doing this time. We don't have all night for your hesitation." Elena didn't flinch. She didn't offer a defense or an apology. She simply turned, her movements economical and fluid, and retrieved the kit from the crash cart. She placed it on the tray table exactly where Thorne would expect it, her fingers brushing the sterile packaging with a reverence that seemed out of place in the chaotic ER. "Thank you," Thorne muttered, though the words sounded more like a dismissal than gratitude. He turned back to the patient, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s whose face was obscured by an oxygen mask and the swelling of severe trauma. The man had been brought in by paramedics 20 minutes ago, found unconscious in an alleyway behind the docks. No ID, no witnesses, just a pocket full of cash and a wound in his side that refused to stop bleeding despite the paramedics' best efforts. Thorne snapped on his gloves, the latex snapping against his wrists with a sharp crack. "All right, let's see what we're dealing with. BP is dropping. Heart rate is tachycardic. He's crashing. I need a line now. Vance, are you listening?" "I have 2 large-bore IVs established in the left antecubital fossa, doctor," Elena said. Her voice was quiet, melodic, but it carried a strange weight, like a stone dropped into a deep well. "Fluids are running wide open. Blood type O-negative is hanging and ready." Thorne paused, his hands hovering over the patient's chest. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time that shift. There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, quickly masked by disdain. "Well, don't just stand there announcing it. Push the fluids faster, and get ready to assist with the intubation. If you drop the laryngoscope again, I'll have you scrubbing floors for the rest of your career." Elena nodded once. She didn't explain that she hadn't dropped a laryngoscope in 10 years. She didn't explain that she had intubated patients in the back of moving helicopters while under fire. She simply stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the patient's airway, her mind already mapping out the anatomy beneath the skin, calculating the angles, anticipating the complications before they happened. The monitors beeped faster, a frantic electronic heartbeat that synced with the rising panic in the room. The nurses around them moved with practiced efficiency, but there was a tension in their shoulders, a fear of Thorne's wrath that slowed their hands. They watched Elena, waiting for her to fail, waiting for the inevitable stumble that would give Thorne an excuse to scream. But Elena didn't stumble. She moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic, her hands steady, her breath controlled. She was a ghost in the machine, a silent operator in a world of noise. And as she reached for the laryngoscope, her fingers brushed against the cold metal, a memory surfaced, unbidden and sharp. The smell of salt spray, the sound of rotors chopping the air, the weight of a rifle in her hands. She pushed the memory down. It didn't belong here, not anymore. Here she was just Elena, the quiet nurse, the one who didn't speak up, the one who was nothing special. Or so they thought. St. Jude's Metropolitan Hospital was a fortress of glass and steel located in the heart of Seattle, a city known for its rain, its coffee, and its relentless pace. The emergency department was the front line of this urban war zone, a place where life and death danced a daily tango, and where hierarchy was not just a structure but a weapon. At the top of that hierarchy sat Dr. Marcus Thorne. He was 38, handsome in a sharp, predatory way, and possessed a resume that glittered with prestigious fellowships and published papers. He was the golden boy of the department, the one who attracted donors, the one who the hospital administration praised in every quarterly meeting. He believed with every fiber of his being that medicine was a performance, and he was the star. Below him were the residents, young doctors eager to please and terrified of failure. And below them were the nurses, the backbone of the hospital, who did the heavy lifting, the emotional labor, and the actual saving of lives, often without recognition. And then there was Elena Vance. Elena had been at St. Jude's for 6 months. She had arrived quietly with no fanfare, no references from famous mentors, and no stories of past glory. She had applied for the job through a temp agency, taken the standard tests, and passed with scores that were good but not exceptional. She had been hired as a per diem nurse, a filler for shifts when others called in sick. To her colleagues, she was an enigma. She was in her early 30s with hair the color of dark chocolate that she always kept pulled back in a severe bun. She spoke rarely, and when she did, her words were few and precise. She didn't participate in the breakroom gossip. She didn't complain about the long hours. She didn't seek out friendships. This silence was interpreted in 2 ways. By some, it was seen as aloofness, a sign that she thought she was better than them. By others, including Dr. Thorne, it was seen as incompetence, a lack of confidence, a void where talent should be. "She's a placeholder," Thorne had said to his chief resident, Sarah Jenkins, during Elena's first week. "Keep an eye on her. If she messes up, document it. I want her gone before probation ends. We don't need dead weight in my ER." Sarah, a kind-hearted woman who was often bullied by Thorne's dominance, had tried to defend Elena. "She seems competent, Dr. Thorne. Her vitals checks are accurate. Her charting is perfect." "Perfect charting doesn't save lives, Sarah," Thorne had sneered. "Instinct does, judgment does, and she has neither. She's a robot, a blank slate, and blank slates are dangerous because you don't know what's missing until it's too late." So the stage was set. Elena was isolated, watched, and waited upon to fail, and she knew it. She could feel the eyes on her, the whispered judgments, the subtle exclusions from team huddles. But she endured it with a stoicism that was unnerving to those around her. Why would someone with such evident skill, such calm under pressure, allow themselves to be treated with such disdain? There were breadcrumbs, if one cared to look, small things that didn't add up. For instance, Elena never wore a watch. Yet she always knew the exact time, down to the second, often calling out intervals for medication administration before the timer on the pump even beeped. Second, she had a scar on her left shoulder, hidden beneath her scrubs, that looked less like a surgical incision and more like a shrapnel wound. When asked about it, she would simply say, "A bike accident," and change the subject. Third, and perhaps most strangely, she had a habit of scanning the room not just for medical needs, but for tactical threats. She positioned herself near exits. She noted the location of heavy objects that could be used as weapons. She watched the hands of visitors, looking for signs of concealed items. One night, during a particularly violent incident involving a gang-related stabbing, a member of the patient's entourage had pulled a knife in the triage area. Before security could react, before Thorne could even shout, Elena had moved. It wasn't a dramatic move. It was a subtle shift of position, a step forward that placed her body between the aggressor and the vulnerable staff. She hadn't fought him. She hadn't screamed. She had simply looked at him, her eyes hard and cold, and said, "Put it down." The man had hesitated, confused by the authority in her voice, and in that second of hesitation, security had tackled him. Afterward, Thorne had berated her. "You could have been killed. You don't confront armed suspects. That's not your job." Elena had said nothing. She had just returned to her station, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back. These moments were dismissed as luck, or adrenaline, or simple foolishness. No one connected the dots. No one wondered who Elena Vance had been before she was a nurse in Seattle. But the truth was waiting. It was waiting in the shadows of her past, in the call center. No one here knew, in the skills that she had sworn to leave behind. And it was about to be revealed not by choice but by necessity. If you are enjoying this story of hidden strength and quiet dignity, please take a moment to hit the like button. It helps us bring more narratives of justice and redemption to your feed. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to join our community of storytellers. Now, let's return to the ER, where the situation is about to escalate. The patient in Trauma Bay 1 was deteriorating rapidly. His blood pressure had dropped to 80/50, and his oxygen saturation was hovering in the high 80s, despite the non-rebreather mask. Thorne was sweating, his brow furrowed in concentration, but his movements were becoming jerky, frantic. "I can't get a view," Thorne muttered, struggling with the laryngoscope. "The airway is swollen, there's blood everywhere, suction, more suction." Alina was already there, the suction catheter in her hand, clearing the field with swift, efficient strokes. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She anticipated Thorne's needs before he voiced them, handing him instruments, adjusting the head position, applying cricoid pressure with just the right amount of force. "Damn it," Thorne cursed. "I'm losing him. Sarah, get the cricothyrotomy kit. We're going surgical." Sarah rushed to the cart, her hands shaking. A surgical airway was a last resort, a desperate measure when intubation failed. It was risky, messy, and required a steady hand. Thorne's hand was not steady. "Doctor," Alina said, her voice cutting through the noise. "His neck is short. There's significant edema. A cricothyrotomy will be difficult. You might miss the landmark." Thorne whipped his head around, his eyes blazing. "Are you questioning my technique, nurse? Do your job and shut up." "I am stating a fact," Alina said, her tone remaining level. "If you miss, you hit the carotid. He bleeds out in seconds." The room went silent. The other nurses stopped what they were doing. No one spoke to Thorne like that. No one. Thorne stared at her, his face turning red. "Get out," he hissed. "Get out of my bay. Now you're done. I'll have your badge before sunrise." Alina didn't move. She looked at the patient, then at Thorne, then at the monitor. The heart rate was dropping, 40 beats per minute, 30. "He's bradycardic," Sarah whispered, terror in her voice. "He's coding." "Start compressions," Thorne shouted, abandoning the intubation attempt. "Vance, get out, security." But Alina didn't leave. She stepped forward, pushing past Thorne. "Move," she said. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Thorne blinked, stunned. "What did you say?" "Move," Alina repeated. She grabbed the laryngoscope from his hand. "You're panicking, you're hurting him, let me do it." "You're a nurse," Thorne screamed. "You don't intubate, that's outside your scope. I will sue you, I will destroy you." Alina ignored him. She looked at Sarah. "Bag him, 2 people, high flow, keep the saturations up." Sarah looked at Thorne, then at Alina. For a second she hesitated. Then something in Alina's eyes, the absolute, unshakable confidence, broke through her fear. She nodded. "Okay." Thorne stepped back, fuming, but he didn't stop her. He wanted her to fail. He wanted to watch her crash and burn so he could justify firing her. He crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. "Go ahead," he sneered. "Show us how smart you are." Alina took a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, centering herself. Then she opened them, and the world narrowed down to the tube, the cords, the angle. She inserted the blade, smoothly, perfectly. She lifted the epiglottis, exposing the vocal cords. They were swollen, red, and surrounded by blood, but they were visible. "Tube," she said. Sarah handed her the endotracheal tube. Alina threaded it through the cords with a gentle twist. She withdrew the stylet. She inflated the cuff. "Connect the bag," she said. Sarah connected the bag valve mask. Alina squeezed it, once, twice. The monitor chirped. A wave of carbon dioxide appeared on the capnography screen. Square waves, perfect. "Breath sounds," Alina said. Sarah put the stethoscope to the patient's chest. "Bilateral, equal, clear." The room exhaled. The tension broke, replaced by a stunned silence. Alina secured the tube. She checked the depth. She taped it in place. Then she stepped back, her hands returning to her sides. Thorne stared at the monitor, then at Alina. His smirk was gone. His face was pale. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. A nurse, a quiet, insignificant nurse, had just intubated a difficult airway with more skill than he possessed. "Luck," he muttered, "pure luck." Alina didn't respond. She just watched the patient, her eyes softening slightly as his oxygen saturation climbed back into the 90s. But the victory was short-lived, because in the corner of the room, unnoticed by everyone except Alina, a man in a dark suit had entered. He had been standing there for the last 5 minutes watching, and he had seen everything. The aftermath of the code was a blur of activity. The patient, now stabilized, was transferred to the ICU. The staff dispersed, exhausted, adrenaline fading into fatigue. But for Alina, the real trial was just beginning. Thorne summoned her to his office 10 minutes later. The door was closed, the blinds drawn. The atmosphere was suffocating. "Sit," Thorne said, pointing to the chair opposite his desk. He didn't sit. He stood behind his desk, leaning forward, his hands planted firmly on the wood. Alina sat. She kept her back straight, her hands in her lap. "Do you have any idea," Thorne began, his voice low and dangerous, "what you just did? You violated protocol. You undermined my authority. You performed a procedure that is strictly within the physician's scope of practice. You endangered this hospital, this patient, and yourself." "I saved the patient's life," Alina said quietly. "You got lucky," Thorne slammed his hand on the desk. "And even if you didn't, the principle remains. You are insubordinate, you are reckless, and you are fired." Alina didn't flinch. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds of gross misconduct," Thorne said, pulling a form from his drawer. "I'm writing you up. I'm recommending immediate termination. You will surrender your badge and keys. You will leave the premises. And if you ever try to work in this city again, I will make sure every administrator knows what you did here tonight." He slid the paper across the desk. "Sign it." Alina looked at the paper. It was a confession of guilt, an admission of wrongdoing. If she signed it, she would be blacklisted. Her career would be over. "I won't sign it," she said. Thorne laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You don't have a choice. I'm the attending. My word is law in this ER. Sign it, or I'll have security escort you out in handcuffs for assault. Because that's what I'll call it, assault on a physician." Alina looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't angry because she had broken rules. He was angry because she had exposed his incompetence. He was afraid, and afraid men were dangerous. "I will not sign a false statement," Alina said. "But I will leave. I don't want to work here anymore." She stood up. She didn't take the paper. She turned and walked to the door. "You're walking away from your livelihood," Thorne called after her. "You're nothing, Vance, you hear me? Nothing. You'll be back to flipping burgers within a week." Alina opened the door. She paused, looking back at him. "You're wrong, doctor. I'm not nothing. I'm just done." She walked out. She went to the locker room. She changed out of her scrubs. She put on her civilian clothes, a simple pair of jeans and a gray sweater. She packed her bag. As she walked through the hospital corridors, heads turned, whispers followed her. "Did you hear? Thorne fired her. She messed up. Poor thing." Alina kept her head high. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just walked. But as she exited the hospital into the rainy Seattle night, she felt a strange sense of relief. The mask was off. The pretense was over. She had tried to live a normal life. She had tried to be ordinary, but the world wouldn't let her. And somewhere in the depths of the hospital, the man in the dark suit was making a phone call. If this story of injustice resonates with you, please share it with a friend who appreciates tales of quiet strength. And don't forget to comment below. Have you ever seen someone underestimated pay it back in the most satisfying way? We love reading your experiences. Now, let's see who is making that phone call. The man in the dark suit was named Director Sterling. He was not a doctor. He was not a hospital administrator. He was a liaison for the Department of Defense, specifically for a unit that didn't officially exist. He had been at St. Jude's that night because he was tracking a person of interest, a former operative who had gone off the grid, a ghost. He had heard rumors that she was in Seattle, that she was working as a nurse. He had come to verify, and he had seen. He stood in the shadows of the ER, watching Alina leave. He pulled out his phone. "Sir," he said into the receiver, "I found her, call St. Valkyrie." There was a pause on the other end. "Is she compromised?" "No, sir, but she's been pushed, fired, by a local physician who doesn't know who he's dealing with." "Status?" "She's walking away, but she's angry and she's exposed." "Bring her in," the voice on the other end said. "We have a situation, a big one, and we need Valkyrie." Sterling hung up. He looked at the empty space where Alina had stood. "Game on," he whispered. Meanwhile, Alina was sitting in her car, the rain drumming on the roof. She was shaking, not from cold, but from rage. 6 months. 6 months of SW. Allowing her pride, 6 months of being treated like dirt. And for what? To save a life, to be rewarded with humiliation. She started the engine. She didn't know where she was going, she just needed to drive. But her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, she answered, "Who is this?" "Alina," a familiar voice said, a voice she hadn't heard in 5 years. "It's Sterling." Alina's blood ran cold. Sterling, how did you find me? We never lost you, Valkyrie. We just gave you space. But space is over. We need you. I'm retired, Elena said. I'm a nurse. I'm nobody. You're not nobody, Sterling said. And you're not retired, not really. There's a situation, a hostage crisis, at the Naval Hospital in Bremerton. They're asking for you, specifically. Elena laughed a bitter sound. Why me? Because the leader of the group, he knows you. He's asking for Valkyrie, and if you don't show up, he starts killing hostages. Elena closed her eyes. The past was catching up. It always did. I'm not coming, she said. Then they die, Sterling said, and it's on you. The line went dead. Elena sat in the car, the rain washing over the windshield. She looked at her hands, the hands that had just intubated a patient, the hands that had held a rifle, the hands that had saved lives and taken them. She started the car. She didn't go home. She turned toward the highway, toward Bremerton. The drive to Bremerton took 40 minutes. 40 minutes for Elena to shed the skin of Elena Vance, the quiet nurse, and reconnect with the soul of Valkyrie, the elite combat medic and tactical operator. She didn't change clothes. She didn't arm herself. She didn't need to. Her weapon was her mind, her training, her presence. When she arrived at the Naval Hospital, the scene was chaotic. Police cars, SWAT teams, news vans. The perimeter was established. The building was locked down. Sterling was waiting for her at the command post. He looked older than she remembered, his hair graying, his face lined with stress. Valkyrie, he said, nodding respectfully. Director, she replied. Her voice was different now, harder, colder. The situation is bad, Sterling said. 3 hostages, 2 doctors, 1 nurse. The perpetrator is a former Marine, discharged dishonorably. He blames the military for his brother's death. He thinks the system failed him. He's demanding an audience with you. Why me? Elena asked. Because you were there, Sterling said. In Kandahar, when his brother died, you were the medic on site. He thinks you could have saved him. He thinks you chose not to. Elena closed her eyes. She remembered the dust, the blood, the choice, triage, saving the many, losing the one. It was the hardest decision of her life, and it had haunted her ever since. He's wrong, she said. Tell him that, Sterling said. He's giving you 10 minutes, then he executes the first hostage. Elena took a deep breath. She walked toward the hospital entrance. The SWAT team leader tried to stop her. Ma'am, you can't go in there unarmed. I'm not going in to fight, Elena said. I'm going in to heal. She pushed past him. She walked into the lobby. The doors swung shut behind her. Silence. Then a voice from the shadows. Valkyrie. Elena stopped. She looked up. Standing on the stairs, holding a pistol to the head of a young female doctor, was a man, tall, muscular, scarred. Jackson, Elena said. You remember me, Jackson said. His voice was rough, broken. I remember your brother, Elena said. He died because of you, Jackson screamed. You let him die. I tried to save him, Elena said, her voice calm. But he was already gone. I saved the other 4 soldiers in the room. I made the choice I had to make. You're a murderer, Jackson yelled. Just like them, just like the system. I'm a healer, Elena said. And I'm here to help you. Put the gun down, Jackson. Let the hostages go. We can talk. We can find justice. Justice, Jackson laughed. There is no justice, only power, and I have the power now. He tightened his grip on the doctor. She whimpered. Elena took a step forward. No, Jackson, you have pain, and pain is not power, it's weakness. Don't let it define you. Jackson hesitated. For a second, the mask slipped. He looked tired, broken. Then the doors burst open. SWAT team members rushed in. Jackson panicked. He raised the gun. Elena moved. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was instinct, muscle memory. She lunged forward, not at Jackson, but at the doctor. She shoved her out of the way. The gun fired. The bullet grazed Elena's arm. She didn't stop. She closed the distance. She disarmed Jackson with a move so fast it was a blur. She pinned him to the ground. Secure him, she shouted. SWAT swarmed in. Jackson was handcuffed. The hostages were freed. Elena sat on the floor, clutching her arm. Blood seeped through her fingers. Sterling ran. And Valkyrie, are you okay? Elena looked at him. She smiled, a sad, weary smile. I'm fine, just a scratch. But as she looked around the room at the faces of the hostages, the SWAT team, the doctors, she realized something. She couldn't go back. She couldn't be Alina Vance anymore. The secret was out. The ghost was revealed. And the world would never see her the same way again. Before we continue to the final confrontation back at St. Jude's, please consider subscribing to our channel. We release new stories every week that explore the themes of integrity and courage. Your support allows us to keep these narratives alive. Now, let's return to Seattle, where Dr. Thorne is about to face a reckoning. Back at St. Jude's, Dr. Thorne was feeling triumphant. He had filed the termination papers. He had briefed the administration. He had painted Alina as a rogue element, a danger to the hospital. He was expecting a commendation for his decisive action. But instead, he got a visit. Two men in suits entered his office. They didn't introduce themselves. They just placed a folder on his desk. "What is this?" Thorne asked, annoyed. "Read it," one of the men said. Thorne opened the folder. Inside were documents, medical records, military records, testimonials. He read the first page. His eyes widened. "Alina Vance," he muttered. "Former Captain, United States Army Special Operations Command, Medal of Honor recipient, combat medic, tactical operator, call sign Valkyrie." He flipped through the pages, photos of Alina in uniform, citations for bravery, letters of recommendation from generals. This is fake," Thorne stammered. "She's a nurse, a bad nurse." "She is one of the most decorated medics in modern history," the man said. "And you fired her for saving a life." Thorne's face went pale. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense, doctor," the man said. "You bullied her. You undermined her. You attempted to destroy her career. And in doing so, you compromised the safety of this hospital. Because when the next crisis comes, and it will, she won't be here to save you." The man leaned in. "We are launching an investigation into your conduct, into your competence, and into your fitness to practice medicine. You are suspended effective immediately. Hand over your badge." Thorne shook. "You can't do this. I'm a top doctor. I bring in revenue." "You bring in liability," the man said. "And now you're finished." They took his badge. They left. Thorne sat in his office, alone. The silence was deafening. He looked at the photo of Alina in the folder. She was smiling, but her eyes were hard, strong. He had mocked her. He had called her nothing. And she had been everything. The news spread through the hospital like wildfire. Alina Vance was not a quiet, incompetent nurse. She was a hero, a legend, and Dr. Thorne had fired her. The staff was shocked, ashamed. They remembered the way they had ignored her, the way they had laughed at Thorne's jokes, the way they had failed to stand up for her. Sarah Jenkins cried in the break room. "I knew," she sobbed. "I knew she was special, and I did nothing." The administration was in damage control mode. They issued a public apology. They offered Alina her job back with a promotion, a raise, anything she wanted. But Alina didn't return. She was gone. However, her legacy remained. A week later, a package arrived at the ER. It was addressed to the staff. Inside was a letter. To the team at St. Jude's, asterisk. "I am not angry. Anger is a waste of energy. I am disappointed. Not in you, but in the system that allows arrogance to masquerade as competence. Medicine is not about ego. It is about service. It is about humility. It is about putting the patient first always. I hope you learn from this. I hope you treat every colleague with respect regardless of their title. Because you never know who you are talking to. You never know what battles they have fought. You never know what strength they hold in silence. Be better. Sincerely, asterisk. Alina Vance." The letter was framed and hung in the break room. It became a reminder, a mantra. And Dr. Thorne, he was stripped of his license. He left the city. He was never heard from again. But Alina, she disappeared. Some say she joined Doctors Without Borders. Others say she went back to the military. Some say she's still out there, watching, waiting, ready to serve. But one thing is certain, she is not nothing. She is Valkyrie, and she is everywhere. As we reach the conclusion of this story, take a moment to reflect on the themes of humility and hidden strength. If you enjoyed this narrative, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a reminder that true worth is often silent. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge our perceptions and celebrate the unsung heroes among us. The story of Alina Vance is a fictional tale, but it speaks to a universal truth. We live In a world that values noise over substance, appearance over character, and title over talent, we are quick to judge, quick to dismiss, and quick to assume that those who are quiet are weak. But silence is not weakness. It is often a choice, a strategy, a shield. Alina chose silence because she had seen the cost of noise. She had seen the destruction of ego. She had learned that true power lies in action, not in announcement. And when the moment came, when the crisis unfolded, she didn't need to shout. She didn't need to boast. She just acted, with precision, with grace, with competence. And in doing so, she vindicated not just herself, but everyone who has ever been underestimated, everyone who has ever been told they are nothing. She showed them that they are everything. The final scene. Seattle 6 months later. The ER at St. Jude's is different now. The culture has shifted. The staff is more collaborative, more respectful. They listen to each other. They value humility. Sarah Jenkins is now the charge nurse. She is firm but fair. She mentors the young nurses. She teaches them to look beyond the surface. One night, a new nurse joins the team. She is quiet, shy, she keeps to herself. The other nurses whisper, "She's weird, she doesn't talk." Sarah walks over to the new nurse. She smiles. "Welcome," she says. "I'm Sarah, what's your name?" The nurse looks up. "Lily," she says softly. "Lily," Sarah says, "it's nice to meet you. Don't worry about fitting in, just be yourself. You never know what gifts you bring." Lily smiles, a small, tentative smile. And in that smile, Sarah sees a glimpse of Alina, a glimpse of the quiet strength that changes everything. She turns back to the floor. "All right, team," she says, "let's get to work and remember, be better." The monitors beep, the phones ring, the chaos begins. But this time it is managed with grace, with respect, with humanity. Because they learned. And that is the greatest victory of all. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please leave a comment below telling us what part resonated most with you. Was it Alina's restraint, Thorne's downfall, or the final message of hope? We read every comment, and if you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe to become part of our growing family of storytellers. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and never underestimate the quiet ones.